I like it. I like it.
I've just been to the gym, so that's why I'm like this.
All right. Yeah, we have a home invader on right now. That's awesome.
The expert of home invasions in multiple continents, Amanda Thebe. Thank you for joining us.
How was the workout?
Good, hard. Just what I needed. I'd been sick for a couple of weeks, and then I'd been traveling, and I just needed to get, back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you now?
Yeah, you had some good travels. You were in Egypt, right?
Morocco.
Morocco.
And then Grant came, and I'm like a travel whore. I'm always moving. I love it. And I'm in Toronto. You got me from Toronto.
Okay.
Okay. That's where I live. Yeah.
Oh, so you and Jimmy are on the same time zone right now.
Where are you, Jim?
I'm outside Philadelphia.
Oh.
In New Jersey.
Yeah. So, good. One of the people who came on our trip was from Philadelphia, and she was teaching me how to say some of the words, because there's this whole like slang there, isn't it? This whole vernacular. Yeah.
John is a big Philly word. Just means anything.
Yeah,
look at that John. Look at that John over there.
I've never understood that. I got that from the Creed movie.
Okay. So, Amit, have you done the hanging off the CN Tower?
No, but I totally would. I'm surprised my kids haven't bought it for me. Yeah, it looks fun.
It's one of those things, because I was up there for just a weekend and I did that. And I'm like, this is one of those things where if I lived here, I wouldn't do it because I live here.
Yeah, that's it.
know?
I don't do anything because I always I live here, and so yeah. But I would do that, and like my friends were like, no, that's how you die, and I'm like, no, it's fine. It's so safe.
That's a great way to die.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
I can think of way worse ways to go than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ready though to die. Yeah.
It's
true.
Yeah, but you're ready to climb that, and the risk is worth it.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it looks fun. I think we should do it as a family though, but it's a bit pricey, and the Canadian dollar is like the same as the peso at the moment.
Okay.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. Yeah.
I'm going to probably be heading up to Edmonton for Andrew Coates' event in September. And I looked at the exchange rate. I'm like, wow, my money's going to go far in Canada.
Yeah, I know. You should start buying Canadian dollars now. Yeah, I'm going to get a GoFundMe started so I can feed my kids.
Well, I'm very excited for this conversation. This is a topic. This is.
I thought we'd started. Have we started? I mean,
we don't know what we're doing.
We don't. This is the not fucking around podcast. We just get right into shit here.
Yeah, we named it wrong. We figured that wasn't the best. Yeah, we named it wrong. We should not fucking around over here with people and things. That'd be a long title, but I think it could work.
I like it though.
The reality is like, I'm sure somebody has probably heard you on some other podcast, and you've probably given them the introduction or the story of your life already. So
I'm so bored of talking about myself. You know that way that I was like, ugh. Do I really have to talk about myself?
So you don't tell us about your whole story, but tell us about your childhood.
I'm actually going to. Because actually sometimes people are like, is she Irish? Is she Scottish? No, I'm fucking not Irish or Scottish. I'm English. But just because I don't speak like the Queen doesn't mean that I'm not English. And so I'm from the north of England, and it was like a working class town. And there was two lots of people that lived there, those that are still there and those that left. I left. The ones that are still there still go to the local pub on a Friday night. They still go to Marks and Spencer's for the knickers. They still go to the Asda for their shopping. Like nothing's changed, and I just couldn't wait to get out.
But now you're jealous. Are you regretting that decision? It sounds like it sounds like you're living in regret right now.
Yeah, totally. Actually, so I go home, every 2 years, maybe. I still got family there, and I am like, I can't wait to go home and eat bacon sandwiches and have a full English breakfast and eat cream cakes. And after 3 days, I'm like, I feel so sick to my stomach of this food. Yeah,
it's a nice reminder. It's a nice reminder when you go home.
Right, and then when when you come back, you immediately start binging and restricting, obviously, of course, like everybody should.
Yeah, like you should. Yeah. But I think that that my accent is very typical of the area, and accents change, within town to town to town. And when I lived there, I knew that he was from this town by the way he said certain words. But what's really funny is my family think I sound really Canadian now.
Really? Obviously, they've never heard of a real Canadian before. I watched the 20-minute video on the different accents of England, and it was the most fascinating 20-minute video. And it was the same woman. She did all 20, and she pointed at all the different regions. She's like, this is what you're going to sound like from here. And it's crazy how many different just accents in one country, just from different areas there are. It's insane.
Well, we don't realize how much that's around here as well. When you're around it, like Philadelphia, there's like the Philadelphia South Philly accent. There's like the North Philly accent. There's that, there's like that Delaware County accent, which is they made a whole Saturday Night Live skit about the who murdered my dirter, the murder my dirter one. Like there was this whole thing.
I saw the Philly SNL one, and I also love. Well, I lived in Boston for a couple of years, so I love some Boston. Even though that's terrible, but I love the Minnesota or the.
Oh God.
There, don't you know? There, don't you know?
I love it.
I totally have it up. Aram knows somebody. It's very close to him who I like to go. Hey, how are you? Don't you know?
The Minnesota, and then you have all the way, all the Southern accents that basically will range from
how many Southern?
Florida. The Florida ones are the best.
So many Southern accents.
And I Texas.
Texas
as well, and I
plenty of That's true. I think it's just because the UK is not a massive country, but you have so many different pockets of things there. And then the United States is this massive place with all these different people. And
we're just used to it.
Yeah.
I used to get really mixed up between the US, like generalized accent, and Canada until I came to Canada. And
a boot.
And my oldest son always pretends to be Canadian, and I'm just like, stop.
Yeah, it's so funny. You'll hear that
you're racist against Canadians. It's good to know.
That's good. Yeah.
Good.
It's funny, like how you'll hear somebody from Canada talking, and a lot of times you're not picking up that they're from Canada, and then out of nowhere, you're like, hey, there it is, like out of nowhere. It's just that one sound that just jumps out of nowhere.
That's all it takes.
Isn't it? All right. Okay. We've talked about every accent in North America and the UK. Now.
Almost.
Let's get to it.
Australian accents.
Let's cover menopause a little bit. Why not? Because I think it's a fun one. So I'm going to start by asking you your thoughts on why has it become such an area of controversy? And I think it's not that it's controversy, but it's very much debated now. I think we see a lot of almost infighting between professionals about menopause. I understand it to be a very vulnerable time in a woman's life because that's my main demographic of people that I serve. So I understand why there's a need to have to discuss it consistently because it just wasn't ever being talked about before. But why is it so controversial right now?
And do you mean controversial from a medical standpoint or from a training standpoint or just from
every standpoint? Because there's just so much about, like, it's just, there's people screaming about it from all different directions. And I think we want to make sense of it.
Well, I sort of think that that's the reason, right? Because there's so many voices there and it's like, who do you believe in? We've come from so I'm just going to backtrack a little bit, even though I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to talk about myself.
We'll talk about yourself a little bit. That's why you're here.
Because, I've been in the fitness industry now. Oh my God, 5 years, I don't know, a long time, right? And you know that when we did all of our training, whether it was in the UK, USA, Australia, wherever, that there isn't anything on menopause. And from our viewpoint, understanding human physiology and potentially nutrition and how it responds to the body, we were told by the crusty white men who lead the fitness world that nothing changes. And in fact, you just need to continue doing the same thing and stop fucking complaining and just keep doing it, right? And I sort of went along with that narrative with a bit more empathy, I might add. But I was in person training in Toronto at the time. And, you know, my demographic were the same as yours, Aram. Like the usually are in the fitness world, the 40 to 60-year-old women with a tiny bit more disposable income who are finally trying to take control of their health and get strong. And they would come in and go, oh, menopause is kicking my ass today, or I can't jump up and down because I'm going to pee my pants. And I'd be like, oh, really? Oh, that sucks. Like, I don't know. But I didn't know what they were talking about. I was like, so whatever, menopause, you know, schmenopause, whatever. I didn't know what they meant. And then I got hit with the wrecking ball that was perimenopause, age about 42, and then spent about 2 years spinning my wheels in the Canadian healthcare system, where every single doctor who I spoke to was desperate to help me. I had really good medical care, but none of them could. And I remember this nurse saying to me, I'd been 2 years getting MRI scans, CAT scans, like spending a lot of money. Well, the Canadian healthcare system spent a lot of money on me. And this nurse said to me, we don't know what's wrong with you, but you look shit. So there's something going on. That was so funny. And it made me laugh because I don't wear like sickness well. I just look terrible. And I just said, what should I do? I just can't continue living feeling substandard. There was so many things that I can't even go there. Like so many things that just didn't feel right about me. And it was like, what the fuck is going on? And actually shortly after that, I went to a gynecologist appointment about something else. And he just said, is everything okay? I started crying. And he said, oh, you're not losing your mind. You're just losing your estrogen, that type of thing. And you're in perimenopause. And I went, what the fuck is perimenopause? This is 11 years ago. I'd never heard of it. And so he just said, you know, it's the years up to menopause. And he said to me, you are struggling with migraines with aura. Like that's why you're getting vertigo and feeling unwell and nausea. You've got depression. We know that. And he said, and I can help you. And I just was like so relieved that I didn't have a brain tumor because that's where my mind was. And then I was like, hang on a minute. So I didn't know about this. And yet this is supposed to be like, I'm supposed to understand the human body. And then I was just pissed. And I actually remember leaving the appointment, walking down the street to meet my husband, who was about to have lunch with me. And I was kicking the bins, or the trash cans, as you call them, kicking the bins, going, I'm fucking hell, what the hell? And I was so angry because I just thought, this is not okay, that this big chunk of information was not accessible to me. And if it's not accessible to me, then the chances are it's not accessible to many women. And that's sort of why. And then I went and met my husband, and he went, how did it go? How did it go? And he looked super worried. And I went, oh, apparently I'm in perimenopause and I'm depressed and you can help me. And he went, oh, thank God for that. I thought you were going to leave me. And it was just like sad, but I sort of laughed as well. And he went, like, what the fuck has just happened to us the last 2 years? So it was like really impactful on him too. Yeah. Like both of us struggled, and the kids, etc. But then I went down that perimenopause rabbit hole and thought, I'm just going to find everything out that I can. This is about 8 years ago. And I reached out and I was like, you're a good doctor. I'm going to speak to you. You're a good pelvic health physiotherapist. I'm going to speak to you. And I gathered these people who didn't have any platform, who were just like, we're desperate to get women help and we can't get the word out there. And so what I think's happened, because going back to your original question, because I have remembered it, is that women have spent the last 20 years having no conversation about menopause, because there was a report that came out from the WHI that sort of vilified hormone therapy, and women were just left to flounder. And so we've got this knowledge gap. We've got a gap in the medical care system because doctors don't get mandatory training. And when we haven't had conversations passed down through generations. And so women are just like, somebody help me. And then you've got the medical community who don't have a large voice in this, unless you go to the medical or the menopause societies. You've got a few celebrity doctors now who are just actually bending the guidelines too much for my liking, that have got massive reach. And then you've got menopause coaches and HRT coaches that are just spewing whatever they can and taking advantage of a very vulnerable set of women that literally make it so difficult for women to find out what's accurate, to distill that noise. And I think people like us three are just like, enough's enough. Right? We have to just be honest with women. We've got to stop taking advantage. And it's really important that we support them through this journey. And we don't try and give them medical advice when it's out of our scope of practice, and that we stick with the basics that we know from the exercise and nutrition science, etc. So I think that's a long answer to a fact that, that's where we are.
What do you think? Perfect. Yeah. What messaging from the maybe menopause coaches or hormone coaches out there do you think is either frustrating you the most or the most damaging right now?
Well, I think that what's happened is not really from the menopause coaches, but the menopause world, is that when we talk about hormone replacement therapy, it's the first line treatment that's recommended by the menopause societies to help women with a bunch of symptoms. Not every symptoms, but a bunch of symptoms. And what I think's happened is, because women were told to stop taking it 20 years ago, and since the time of that report, a lot of it has been sort of unpicked, and a lot of the researchers have come out and said, no, hormone therapy is safe, and the menopause societies have jumped on that and said, yes, every single woman should be have an assessment for her health and her risks, and if she's a candidate, she should be offered that. And so I think what's the most frustrating thing for me is that now menopause has become HRT, which should be called menopause hormone therapy, and nothing else matters. And I'm sat here thinking, we're not defined by this time of our lives, right? One of the components of the menopause conversation is women should have access to medical care that may or may not include hormone therapy. For some women, it's contraindicated, whatever, it's a drug. And so therefore we have to be respectful of it. But in the meantime, it's almost like, well, the lifestyle interventions that we all preach about have seemed to have took a back seat in the conversation. And I'm like, regardless of whether you're on hormone therapy or not, you should be doing as much as you can to ease the burden of your symptoms, to bulletproof yourself for longevity, like moving forward. And it's really hard to get traction on that conversation when it's been, I think, a little bit hijacked by, and I'm gonna keep talking about these celebrity doctors, because it's almost like they're trying to make up for lost time, saying every woman should be on hormone therapy. I'll be on it till the day I die. I'll stick it on my face. I'll use testosterone every day. And I'm just like, stop it, because it's not fair to do this to women, I don't think.
Well, it's not. It's not fair to have the conversation without having the conversation about the lifestyle interventions to support the hormone replacement therapy, if that's the route you choose to go down. I mean, just the word menopause itself, it's the cessation of menses, right? I mean, the word tells us everything we need to know. And I find
what tells us it's the men in it. That's this is take the first three letters and blame everything on that.
It's definitely it's 100% my fault. I mean,
all your fault. Yeah.
I will be the whipping post for every menopausal woman on the planet. I will take that burden. I will be your Jesus Christ.
Wow, you just turned that into something very different. I will be there, Jesus Christ.
No, but
what's happened is there's almost like a type of a cult following that's happened, and
yes.
It's almost, and I don't think that everybody possesses enough critical thinking or enough background knowledge to be able to say to somebody, if a doctor says, every woman should be taking hormone therapy to prevent Alzheimer's. That's not an accurate statement. That's bending what we know from the position statements and the medical consensus. So there's people like me that say things like, well, no, that's not accurate. And you get pounded upon, right? You get pounded upon because you're challenging an OBGYN. And I've just found that we can't have dialogue anymore. We can't just say, well, we don't know that to be true at the moment. And yeah, that's the sort of thing. And it's almost like other women just saying, no, you're not allowed to question this. And we see that in other areas of health too, right?
This is just the new one.
Yeah,
everybody's jumping
latest.
on.
Yeah. I think once you start using absolute statements, you've lost credibility in my eyes, and that's just because I'm a professional in this field and I know better. But I think for a lot of women who tend to be in this state and they're vulnerable and they're looking for a solution to a very emotional problem, because body image is an emotional thing. Putting on unsightly fat where once before it was not a problem is a very emotional thing, and you're very warranted to have that response. So like you said, I think it's a very opportune time for a lot of these people to blast this message that I have a solution to your problem, and that solution is actually very easy and it's very quick.
And nobody's ever told you about this before, and I'm the first one to discover this. And so sign up for my program and buy my supplements. And you bang on, right, about two things there. First of all, the body image. I mean, it's the majority of women are going to put weight on in menopause. Statistically, you can't fight that. It does play a part in, our body image. And there was an article written recently that I was involved in a Canadian magazine that was really interviewing a lot of women during this time of their lives. And there are some studies to show how disordered eating and body dysmorphia and eating disorders are on the rise during this time of a woman's life. And it makes a ton of sense when you look at the puberty conversation and the menopause conversation, at these really big hormonal shifts in a woman's life. And so these scammers come out and they're just like, we're going to hit these women where there's a pain point that we know that they're going to be like, well, I might as well try it. It's only $50 a month for these supplements. Why don't I just try them?
Yeah.
Right?
I think most coaches are selling through pain points and not the other way around. Do you think that is there a connection or correlation or anything in your eyes with the use of birth control at a young age, with it just being maybe given out so much more? It's so much more common over the past, I don't know how long, I'd be guessing 20, 30 years. My skin, take birth control. I have an irregular period, take birth control. I have a painful period, take birth control. And it's 15 years old, 16 years old.
Yeah, I don't know is the answer. And I'm not in a position to be able to talk about that. I mean, somebody like Dr. Jen Gunter would be a good person because she's the one who does this day in and day out. But I don't have any thoughts on this personally, or experience, actually, any lived experience. But Dr. Jen Gunter has written about birth control pill, and it's safe. It's a safe way to treat all of the things that you've spoken about. And there's also a lot of people on the flip side saying, yeah, no, it's not. And then there was that pill documentary, which was riddled with pseudoscience on Netflix. But yeah, I would definitely run that by a medical professional and just get like a real answer, not just me saying, no, I think it's fine.
Yeah, because I hear different things from different people. And you're taking something that's controlling hormones. If you're doing that for 20 years, is there some kind of a downstream effect or effect on the person, the person's symptoms or experience with menopause? So I appreciate you saying you don't know. We always like to say that's good when people say that.
I say I don't know often because I'm always willing to learn and hear more. And I think the conversation around that area is, opening up and they're looking at it more. But what we've been on the pill since the 60s, I believe, that's when I think it was introduced. And now it's like, I'm going to do the math, 60 years on. I think we might have an understanding, but
it just seems like it's more common. Now I'm a high school teacher and it just seems more common now versus maybe when I was younger and it was people are getting on it because they're sexually active.
Yeah, we went on it so we didn't get pregnant, and now but they have shown that it can help with other things. And also, one of the things as well that might add to that conversation, Jim, is that the Gen X women like myself, we're a noisy bunch and we're just talking about menopause now. So like 20 years ago, nobody was talking about it because it was like, ooh, menopause. And we don't have those conversations. And so maybe 2 and 2 together is made us go, oh, well, if menopause is getting worse, well, may it be this? Well, I don't think menopause is getting worse at all. I think we're just saying, we've had enough. You know, we've had enough about it. And you know, what's really funny is just talking about introducing the conversation about menopause. I have 2 boys, and one of them, they're 17 and 21, and my oldest son has ASD, so he's neurodiverse. He is on the spectrum and has a very small number of friends. He'd rather have 2 really good friends than 100 friends like me. I just gather people and you could be my friend. And he had one of his 2 friends over to his house, and I wrote a book on menopause. And in the book of menopause, I'm like, you know, showing my guns, and he's like, oh my God, your mum wrote a book about That's awesome. He didn't say about menopause. And he flicked up the book and he opened it and he went, but apparently she's got a really dry vagina and doesn't like having sex with you anymore.
But apparently my
son came upstairs and he went, I have 2 friends. And one of them now knows you've got a dry vagina and you don't like having sex with that. And I went, I don't anymore, actually. I'm fine now. It's all fine. He went, I don't want to know.
I'm not going to say it, but it's not dry anymore. I won't say the other words, son.
No, don't say that.
Are you talking about the M word?
The M word. The M word. Unless we're baking, we can't say the M word. But the point of you telling that funny story is that, like, it's a word now. It's just a word now. And in my household, we know it's a word. And, you know, we don't have the eye roll anymore. It's just like, you know, my mom went through menopause and now she talks about it. You know, and sometimes my son will be saying, are you doing a podcast? Because my mates are coming around. I don't want you talking about menopause. And, you know, we're trying to play the Xbox. But, you know, I think it's just become a very open conversation now. And it's that whole thing. Once you've said it once, like Aram, you've had a whole conference talking about it. It's just now in the same realm as pregnancy and postpartum depression and pelvic floor health. It's just within that female health scope now.
Now, as far as, you know, we've talked for now a good amount of time about the hormonal implications of menopause. And I think a lot of coaches or functional medicine people that are in this space like to use the idea of undulating hormones as the disqualification from being able to get results. Right? It's,
I know.
Well, your hormones are this, and this is why you're not getting results. Versus, even if your hormones are degraded, even if they aren't functioning optimally as they once did, that doesn't disqualify you from being able to still see some type of a result and feel better. So what are some pieces of advice that you can give people when they're in this phase of life to be able to not be victimized by their condition, but to be empowered to make the right choices?
And you nailed it, really, because there's a lot of noise in that arena as well. And you know, I'm not trying to discredit anyone here because I'm really open to learning and listening. But when somebody says in a regular menstrual cycle, you can't train like this in this phase, but you have to train like this in another, it's just sort of grouping all these women into this one pot when we realize that we're all very individual in our experiences. What drive change and not what some study says, and especially when the studies are based on an elite athletic population and they don't translate to the gen pop, right? And so I think I can always look at them through that lens. And you know that I'm really good friends with Liz, and she came to your show, and I've spent a lot of time talking to her and learning about stuff with her. And I basically have a PhD now because we talk all the time about it. But you know, and I've written about this as well many times, is that when you go to do your exercise, you're always going to do it based on how you feel, whether you're a man, boy, girl, woman. Like if you've got a set program for the week and it's like you've got to do 4 strength training programs a week, whether it's upper body split or whatever, and you wake up on Wednesday morning and you feel like cack, you're just going to have to make the call and say, I can't work out today, or I'm going to have to adjust my workout, or maybe I just work on some biomechanics. And you as a coach, you're usually able to do that because you're just like, yeah, I know how this works and it's fine. But when the general population have been given a program and they think they're not allowed to change it and they don't feel optimal, and then they go ahead, chances are they're going to feel even worse afterwards. And so my thing, especially through menopause, when your hormones are being a bitch, they just are, right? Some days you feel great, some days you feel terrible, and you need to have, I call it like structured flexibility, have like your workout plan in mind. But then check in and go, is today the day I'm going to carpe the diem out of my workout? Or am I just going to do like 15 minutes of like one round of it and just see how I feel? And given, when I did a post about that and I put it out there, women said, are you allowed to do that? And I'm like, do whatever you want. You're the boss of you. Right. And so I feel like any exercise science professional will say to you, you have to base your workouts on your current state and how you are. But that also doesn't mean that you go, I get to like slack off a bit today. You know, it's fine. It's being truthful and being very honest about it. And I talk about that a lot through perimenopause in particular, when the symptoms can be so impactful that quality of life is impacted. Energy, like chronic fatigue, is a massive symptom because estrogen sort of impacts our energy source in our brain. And so it's really important to give women a win, whether that's going out for a 10-minute walk or doing your big workout. Like, just be kind to yourself and know that every single thing you do counts. It's not negative. It's net positive every time you do something like this. And you, more than anything, building up that consistency, that habit, so that when you do start feeling good, and you will, it's already in the works, right? So that's how I always approach it.
Yeah, that's something that my friend Paul Bono talks a lot about, because
You have a friend called Bono?
His first name's like, Paul.
But like that, I just went totally dirty then, because I'm just like a boner.
Like, at first I thought you meant like the guy from U2, Bono.
Oh yeah, but
Bono.
It's not Bono. Okay.
Yeah, it is now Boner. His last name's Boner.
Yeah.
Paul Erection. Erection's his middle name. But he talks about that, dealing with an autoimmune disease, about adapting the workout and how important that is, because how much it'll set him back and his clients that have autoimmune issues by pushing too hard. Now, we can't do that. Everything that you just said, he talks a lot about. So,
but you know what, Jim, like in the menopause world, you've got people making these big statements like zone 2 is not impactful for menopausal women. They only should be doing HIIT and sit, right? And
really? I haven't heard that.
Have you, Aram? You must have heard.
He scrolls more than me, so he probably has.
I can't stand the exercise advice that's given to menopausal women, because it makes menopausal women feel like they're a fucking eggshell. Like they're just going to break from the second that they touch a weight. They're going to break. If their heart rate goes above 105 beats per minute, they're going to die. The reality is just like what you said.
If you feel like their cortisol, imagine telling a woman not to exercise because it's going to spike her cortisol.
And if your cortisol goes up, you're going to just immediately put on 400 pounds and die immediately. So that's what happens.
Yeah, and then your body will stop producing insulin, and obviously you'll immediately get diabetes. I mean, all of those things will happen.
It's fine, because then you can do an estrogen detox, and then you'll all be fine.
Beautiful. And then buy my $500 gut reset program, and we're going to be okay. But I when it comes to exercise, I think exercise is, to me, that's a little bit above where I would even want to focus on. Like, let's say a woman truly is in the dog fight of all dog fights. She's 45, 46 years old. She's seen weight slowly creep up. Nothing really has measurably changed. Now, that's the other thing, is I always will challenge women, because a lot of women will tell you, well, I haven't done anything different in the last year, or different in the last 10 years, because the last 10 years matter for today as well. So I think if you've become less active, if stress has gone up, if sleep has gotten worse, if physical activity has changed from being very, very strength focused to being mostly cardiovascularly focused, like, these things need to be taken into consideration to determine where do you want to go next. but the basics are always going to play out. So when it comes to nutrition, because I think that's the part that women they very, very confused on, is like, well, somebody's telling me to fast, and somebody's telling me to go low carb, and somebody's telling me that my stomach can't handle all the protein that I'm eating. So they're getting all this information. What is the most general basic advice you can give a woman who's in that phase of life when it comes to nutrition?
Yeah. So first of all of the things that you said are the big rocks. And if people aren't sleeping and they're stressed like crazy, and and that hasn't been like addressed first of all, the rest of it doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Right. So and most women aren't sleeping through perimenopause as well. So get on that. Like, please don't suffer.
I paid you to help me. Don't tell me just to sleep better.
And calm the fuck down. Can you imagine saying to a menopausal woman, just calm down?
It works every time in any romantic relationship, so I don't see why it wouldn't work in a coaching relationship.
But I have a nutritional background, but I also dug into the research a lot, of which there isn't a ton, and then reached out to experts that had more training than me and just tried to find out exactly what the differences were for a menopausal woman, perimenopause to menopause, as opposed to any other time of their life. And guess what? There's not a ton that changes at all. And we know this because I think people forget that nutrition science is a science, and we do have we do know processes in the body. We do know about energy balance and how thermodynamics work. So we have all of that, but it would be wrong to say that there are no nuances that we need to take into account. And these are also true for getting older. So obviously an increased protein intake is advisable as you get older. Yeah. And during perimenopause, as things like sarcopenia and our bone health are at higher risk, it is sort of accelerated somewhat through there, we need to be preserving, building, and holding on to anything we can. And if the mechanism of muscle protein synthesis needs amino acids, then you've got to eat protein, right? And so there's no data that says that protein's bad for the guts or the liver. That's just bogus. We know that. There's obviously an optimal amount of protein depending on you as an individual. I always give a ballpark figure of try and get 100 grams of protein a day. And there's a bit of leeway either side, because if you're talking to a 250-pound woman whose ideal body weight is 130 pounds, then she needs to be in the 100 to 130 grams of protein. And I always think it always falls about there. And I do like to generalize a lot with the general population, because I feel like they get really overwhelmed. Eat more plants, eat lots of fruit. Don't be afraid of carbs. Carbs is our preferred energy fuel. But then we really need to sort of minimize the fun carbs, the ones we all want to eat more of, right? Yeah. And so the fruit and the veg and the grains, clearly for fiber as well. We're at higher risk of having higher cholesterol and cardiovascular disease. So we've got the reason that the nutrition changes is because our health risks change. And so it's optimizing your nutrition based on that, right? Drink less alcohol, drink plenty of water. Fats always work out for themselves. I always don't really ever talk about fats because there's always enough in the food you eat. We cook with it. I eat my body weight in butter every week. I mean, it's the best food group out there. No, I'm in general, you don't really need to spend too much time on that. And then for carbohydrates, just minimize the more exciting ones that don't have a ton of nutritional value. And none of that is sort of rocket science, and none of that is saying you have to fast and you have to go keto. And people like Dr. Mary Claire Haver with her Galveston diet, the basis of that for menopausal women, because it worked for her, remember that's why she wrote the book, is 1,200 calorie diet, no carbohydrates except quinoa, and to be keto, and then fasting until lunchtime. And my question every time is why? Why would you do those things unless you don't like carbohydrates, you don't like eating in the morning, and you don't like eating because you're only going to have 1,200 calories.
And you don't like life.
And you're a bit dead inside, yeah.
But that's the problem is again, it's preying on that desperation. It's preying on that, well, I've gained 20 pounds and I'm miserable. I'll do anything it takes to get it off. So here's your solution, and you can do it really fast.
And these people deny calories in, calories out because it sounds simplistic, right? And it sounds reductionist in the scheme of things. And so I understand that argument, right? But there's nuance to it that we can talk to, right? And I think that we're all talking about it. There's some really great coaches on social media, and it doesn't dismiss the women at all when you say we understand what energy balance is, how, if you're in a deficit or a surplus. We understand that estrogen interacts with tons of other hormones like insulin and cortisol and your hunger hormones. You're like always hungry and never satisfied. Did you know that? Like it's literally how it feels. And then, you know, your metabolism isn't broken. We have the Ponza study, which was probably one of the best studies on metabolism ever, that showed us until the age of 60, we don't have any massive change in our metabolism. And then it's only quite small, right? And so all of those people that are telling you that you lose 25% of your metabolism, whatever that means,
it's probably more like if there's even a study behind that, like some kind of an epidemiological study, and it's not looking at people's lifestyle. I think a lot of people just have a really poor lifestyle, very low muscle mass, and maybe for those people, they're deteriorating quicker or earlier. I mean, I have no basis for that other than my own what feels like common sense.
But, and the majority of people, not just women, don't exercise enough, don't meet the health standards. In the USA, is it what, like 3% or something? It's high, right? So you're talking about women who are looking for help and they don't even meet the big rocks that you were talking about, Aram.
And like you had referenced with people needing more protein, we know that as we age, we need more protein, but that's based also on the minimum amount required to survive. So the average person who's making it a habit to eat a decent amount of protein, they're not going to have to try to learn a whole new way as they're getting older. They're already getting that amount that the 70-year-old version of them will need. You know, you take the, 0.8 grams per kilogram number. Most people aren't eating that. And if they were, they're going to have to increase it, as they age. So like they're laying these foundational habits down ASAP, and everything that you said. It's the lifestyle aspects are so necessary to mitigate, the side effects.
And they are habits. You're right. That's the only way to do this. Like you can't expect people to have adherence to anything if you just throw the whole book at them. And that's what these diets do. And that's why they're not sustainable. It feels good in the first 2 weeks when you're sort of hungry and you feel like you're superior and you're smug about it. And then you start losing a bit of weight. And then when you stop, you just go, all I want to do is eat food. I've been hungry for 3 weeks. Yeah.
Well, I think there's also a massive psychosocial component that gets ignored very often, is that most women have spent a great deal of their lifetime trying to become the smallest version of themselves. Not the strongest, not the one that's the most thriving, not the one that's the most abundant, but the one that's physically the smallest. And what's that been? That's been the cycles of dieting multiple times. That's been multiple rounds of muscle loss and fat loss. So you're always net positive fat and net negative muscle. And as you start to age and you're losing more muscle due to sarcopenia, it becomes even more exacerbated and becomes more evident. And I think women just get the wrong advice about stuff along the way. And then they're stuck with that shitty advice in their 40s and 50s when it's already the hardest. And they just keep like driving their truck further into the mud and spinning their wheels and wondering why things aren't working, as opposed to taking more of a quality of life approach. So I wanted to talk about that with you. How do we get women?
I love that little soapbox rant. That was awesome. It's true. We've been made to be smaller all of our lives.
How do we get that perspective to shift? What can we, as people that are supporting women in midlife, how do we change that conversation to, let's start to focus on how you actually feel every day, how you show up in the world every day, not what fucking size you are?
It's a really good question. And I have a chapter in my book, and I think this is a pretty brilliant chapter title called Shift Happens. I thought it was funny. And
like that.
And shift happens, and it needs to happen. And I think this is sort of, when you talk about tenets of health, you've got nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, and then there's the whole mindset side of it, right? And as coaches, it's sort of where we sort of get off a little bit because we think it's exciting, but it's sort of boring for other people to listen to. But to me, this is where real change takes place. And so I this is how I felt, and this is a representation of the story I hear from many, many women, is in the thick of my perimenopause, I remember maybe 10 pound heavier, and I'm not a very big person, so 10 pound was significant for me. I remember looking in the mirror and my eyes were dead, right? I didn't look like the shoplifter I look like now, but like I had this like dead eyes, and I was like, I hate the way you look. I hate the way I feel. I hated everything about me. And I'd been living like that for 3 or 4 years. And I just was like, is this how I'm going to wake up every single day? Is this it? Is this the new personality I've got? And I always remembered being like there, big and strong and loud and in your face. And then I was this introverted shell of Amanda. And it was right then I just thought, I have to do something that like refines myself. And so that's the type of work that women need to do. They need to have belief in themselves and realize that their worth is so much more than just the clothes that they're wearing, the number on the scale. Like it's really what's innate and inside. And so you have to have some really hard conversations. The first thing I did, Aram, was I went down that whole psychological route and started looking at what my strengths were and what my values were, and just got some perspective back on what made me Amanda. And it was such a good exercise to do. And essentially it came out of it, and it was, I'm kind, I'm empathetic, I'm curious, and I'm loyal, and I love my family, and all of that more than my job. I had all of that ready. And then I was like, if that's what makes me me, then I need to do all of the behavioral steps that support that. And that's sort of where I started in pragmatic terms, like tangibly. What that meant was, whether I wanted to or not, I got up every morning and did 10 minutes to myself before the rest of the family with a cup of coffee, and just set myself up for the day and was like, okay, I always make breakfast for my family. I just like doing it. So everyone was out of the house after breakfast, and I went straight for a walk to the gym. I got my workout in and I set myself up for the day. And that's essentially what I needed to do. I needed to get back into habits and consistency and find the things that sort of fed my soul. And when you do that, it takes the focus off, like, I hate the way my legs look in this. I hate the way my skin and hair have changed. It sort of you're adding more to your life rather than like always taking away from yourself. And so that's sort of the approach I take.
It's fascinating because I think it happens to men too. Like, I mean, Jimmy's 45, I'm 40. I definitely noticed that there was a much higher level of aesthetic focus in my earlier 30s and in my late 20s. And then I started to see some white in my hair. I started to slow down a little bit more belly fat came on because work responsibilities became the priority and not my physique. Then I started to notice that I was losing hair in certain spots. I've been on TRT since I was 31 years old. And I think the way that I coach women now is it's coming from a place of understanding that it's going to be a hell of a lot more challenging now more than ever, which will then put the emphasis on the variables that we can actually control. Because I think so many women are still focused on this romantic 20-year-old aesthetic that they always recall. And they forget all of these different steps that they've already taken in life. They've had a job, a very fruitful career. They've become a mother. Their kids are now older. They're starting to get more independent. So it's almost like they lose themselves and they lose their routine for so long that then now in their 40s and 50s, they're fighting to get it back. But they're trying to go back to what it was like when they were 20 versus meeting themselves where they're at 45 or 50 when life has significantly changed. How do you prepare a woman to accept that now life is different and it's okay to adjust?
Well, change is really hard, right? And you've said that about yourselves, like as you get older. I keep saying to my husband, it's not a dad bod, it's a father figure. But I mean, change is inevitable, and other people look at you and don't judge you because you've put weight on or you've lost hair or nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
You care.
I had a student not too long ago, like a few weeks ago. She's like, did you used to have hair? Because I'm like balding in the back. And I'm like, obviously I did. You're just being an asshole right now. And I go, yeah, I used to. And now I don't, just like half your fathers. And the girl's like, that's actually true. Yeah, that's true.
Fine. That's
like,
fine.
nobody care. Like, you're not going to care when you're older as a woman. No. Half your fathers were losing their hair, but you're right on. We're all, nobody else
we
cares.
get in our own way. And I actually had this very same conversation with my son yesterday, because I went to the gym. I had a very, very bad winter personally. The doctor realized I was struggling with seasonal affective disorder. I sort of in a deep depression, didn't look after my health, put a little bit of weight on, wasn't as strong. And like I say, that's part of my identity, right? So for the last, since January, I've been really focused on getting strong, and I was doing an overhead press, and I was like, the girls' guns are coming back. And my son was like, that's always about how you look. And I got really upset with him, and I said, that's just not true. You've been along with me for the last 8 years, and you've seen how impactful perimenopause and depression has been on my health. That's my driver. It's not how I look. That's a benefit of it. And that's like and Bill Campbell has talked about, like, what's one of the main drivers that we go to the gym for. You cannot lose the vanity side of it, because it's still the driver. But when we're younger, it's more of a driver. And it's true, as we get older, we'd be like, I don't want to be like this when I'm like 80. I want to be like, I don't want to be frail. I want to be strong. And, so I think our focus does shift. But what happens through perimenopause is that there's sort of a bit of an accelerated change, right? Like, so the rest of the change has been sort of slow and gradual, and you're like, oh, I'm getting a few wrinkles, but then all of a sudden you feel like you wake up to this thin skin and wrinkles and gray hair and dry vaginas, everything, right? Everything's
You just described Aram to a T.
Yeah, that's exactly that's basically how I feel every day.
Yeah.
And so there's this whole like massive change that's been thrown on you, and you're supposed to be dealing with that, as well as like aging parents, kids leaving home, all of the things you spoke about, the career changes. And it feels like a big lot of overwhelm. And so my advice to women during this time is, like, first of all, get educated about what menopause is, and know this is a rite of passage that you're actually privileged to go through. Lean into it and stop fighting it, because it's got to happen. Otherwise, if it doesn't, then you're not here, right? You want to live long enough to go through menopause. Lean into it, and then look to all of the things that you bring value to the world, right? And again, it's going back to the strengths and values, but like being this, what's wrong with getting older? Like, and I saw a photograph of me the other day, and I was smiling, and I had loads of like lines around my eyes, and it's one of my
Jeez, Aram, hit mute. Just hit mute on the mic thing. Oh my goodness. She's like at the pinnacle of a great. There we go.
yeah, it's fine. And it was one of those things where I was just like, I don't think I've ever been happier in my skin now. And I'm not as ripped as I used to be, and I don't look as young, but I've got now this innate confidence that I think postmenopause brings. Because this is what happens in postmenopause. You go through all of that tumultuous time, and then through the other side of menopause, they say in about a 3 to 5 year window, there's like a calm that comes over women. The brain restructures and the hormones start to calm down. And when you speak to women who are postmenopause and that everything's sort of reset itself, they're ready to take over the world. Yeah. And so one of the pieces of advice I would give to women is like, this is a tunnel with a light at the end. It's not some deep, dark cave, even though it feels like it. And there is so much potential at the other side. And so just keep looking forward. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I'm picturing you talking about the tunnel. Like, it's like menopause is just squeezing all the shit out of you that you've been like battling with. Like, if you could kind of look at it like you got to go through this hardcore filter to get to the other side of that, to get to that piece that you were just talking about.
And I feel like I want to write a book that's like called, like I am due to write another one, but that's called like Not Dead Yet, because it's almost that like I want to really showcase women that are saying, you've got us dead and done for just because we're in our like 40s and 50s and menopause is, wiped us out type thing. Yeah. And I think that women of their 50s now and 60s are not the women of 40, 50 years ago. We're not, right? We're taking care of our health. We're becoming educated. We're challenging, the stereotypes, and we have to continue to keep challenging them.
Yeah. I think what you guys touched on with radical acceptance, I forget who the person was like that coined that term,
like that.
But radical acceptance, it basically comes from different teachings, Buddhist teachings, things like that, just completely radically accepting where you are. You know, this conversation needs to stop that people are having in their head of what it used to be like. And like you said, speeding up. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that cartoon. It's like a square that's kind of rolling down a hill. But as it's rolling down the hill, the corners are getting dull. And they just keep getting dull and dull and duller. And then it's a wheel flying down. And that's what you just described. Like we didn't notice it maybe before, how things were dulling. And then all of a sudden it's you know, that snowball effect.
But then there's like, so, you know, there's a lovely snowman at the end. I don't know, because there definitely is like, it's like almost like crossing the Rubicon. You get to this place where you're just like, I feel way more confident in myself. This is what I'm hearing from women. This isn't me. They feel more confident in themselves. They feel like they've regained themselves again, and they're challenging these stereotypes. And I personally feel like, you know, this is one of the really important messages we can give women through menopause, right? At the other end is that, like, just keep looking forward.
Yeah. Well, I think it's nice just to even have that positive note. I think a lot of times we talk about it. We talk about what can people do.
Yeah, the shitty stuff.
All that stuff. And it's like, okay, this is stuff I can do. But to get that reminder from you right now that there is this light at the end of the tunnel, this hope on the other side of this struggle, just you got to ride it out. Just like any other emotion. You could be angry about something. You could be hurt, broken, and grieving. It's just riding out that emotion and trusting that it will pass through.
And you know what, Jim? Like on that as well, we have to see women where they are, right? So if there's a 45-year-old woman that's stuck on the sofa with depression and she's just not functioning with a ton of symptoms, and we're like going, oh, it's fine on the other side, you know, then it also can be dismissive.
That's not helpful.
And it's not helpful, but we're not saying that. What we're saying is, one, find out what the tools are that are going to help you right now to ease this burden, right? Because it's not forever. You will get through the other side. And there are things you can be doing now. And even if you don't think they're helpful, they are. We're telling you they are, right?
I always say, if you're not currently doing it, it's not too little. And I think people, they don't move forward with something because it's just a walk. It's just an egg. Like whatever, it's not enough. You know, and those little things are probably the most powerful things that people can be doing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And those little things build into big things. That's what motivation, and consistency, that's how that builds, right? And I always think that about exercise, you know, going back to Aram's question about, you know, what should women and shouldn't they do? And I'm like, most women don't exercise, right? So if we can get them out walking, that's a win. If we can get them to go and do Zumba or Aquafit, who cares, right?
Maybe not Zumba, but that's fine. I'm just kidding.
We'll judge you, but whatever, you do you. And then because what we understand about how motivation and curiosity builds is that when you do something often, you start to believe in yourself again. And then when you believe in yourself, you start to go, oh, well, what else am I capable of? And when women don't try something, that absolutely correlates to a loss of lean body mass.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's what it is I think, you know, our responsibility in this field, and I do consider us to be healthcare professionals to some extent, is we have to acknowledge and then we have to empower. Because I think a lot of people are acknowledging, but then they're placing this label on the person. Like, you're depressed and that's the reason why you can't get XYZ done. You have an eating disorder and you have to live behind that eating disorder your whole life. That's who you are. You're in menopause, so you're fucked and you're broken. Versus, these are just conditions in your life. They don't have to be who you are, and you don't have to stand behind them. You can get out in front of them and you can work with those conditions to still feel your best. Are you going to look your best that you've ever looked? Maybe not.
You're going to look, but that's the thing too. It's like you have the chance to be the best 60-year-old version of yourself.
Yes. And I think
if you do nothing now, you're going to be the worst possible 60-year-old version of yourself. Let's focus on that.
And what I want to really see change is because I mean, we're heading in the right direction. We see more younger women getting into strength training. We see a little bit less fear about heavy lifting and muscle accumulation. So that's a good thing. And I think the more we can set up the 20 and 30-year-old woman to be prepared for menopause, the less we're going to see these issues, because all the women that I serve now are coming from that 90s low fat, low carb, high cardio way of thinking. So maybe the menopausal women that are going to be coming in the next 15 years are going to be much more equipped to handle it with a lot more grace than they are now.
Yeah, like, and the educational piece as well, because you don't know what you don't know. That's the kicker, right? But yeah, like, I think, you know, in the 30 odd years I've been a coach, like, women are in the gym now. I love it. The gym I go to is the JCC, the Jewish Community Center. Yeah. And I love it because every age and ability goes there. And it's so fulfilling for me to see that. And, you know, I go with my sons, I post all the time, and they're 18 or, you know, 20 and 17, however old they are. And they go
21 and 17.
Yeah, thank you. I'm terrible mother. It's their birthday. It's their birthdays next week. But they go with their 53-year-old mom because it's not unusual now, where it may have been a few years ago. And so being proactive with your health is so important. It doesn't mean that menopause isn't going to happen. It doesn't mean it's not going to be shitty, but it does mean that you already have the, you know, those lifestyle interventions in place that you can continue with as best as possible. And then you can get help if you need it. And then you can, you know, have the education, all of those things.
I feel like these people, it's like if you were to compare like the CEO of a business to like the 20-year-old version of yourself with your body. And now people are in this place, well, I'm never going to be the CEO. So why even bother trying to get a promotion? Like, let's just get some promotions under our belt with where we currently are. Accept where you're at, and let's do some things to get some promotions, even if you're never going to be the CEO or the 20-year-old version of yourself.
But even then, like, you can change. I mean, if aesthetically you want to change and you want to lose weight, there's almost this idea that can't happen.
Well, I think that the person doesn't. I think the person is so convincing themselves that it can't happen, and they're so focused on the result, which we kind of talked about before. So focused on the result that when the result's not happening in a certain time point, or they're not seeing the thing in the mirror, then they tell, well, it can't happen, so why bother? Well, you're focusing too much on the result. That would be like saying there's no point in even doing your job well at work because you're never going to be the top dog over there. It might happen if you stop focusing so much on the goal. You have a much better chance of getting there, because the person who enjoys walking will always walk further than the person who's walking to get to a destination. You know, that whole thing.
Trusting the process, right? Beth's really good at that, obviously. That's her thing, but she's really good at sort of like hammering that point home as well. And you can't just expect change to happen in a 3-week window. You need to be adopting things that actually impact you lifelong, right?
Yeah. But the change is the behavior. That's what people need to be focusing on. I need to change my behavior, not worry so much about the change that they can see. Because too many people get caught up. It's not, this isn't enough. This isn't enough. This isn't enough. So you stop the behavior, where if you're really looking for change, there needs to be that focus on the behavior change that you're having. Do you feel good getting outside for a walk? Like, all those things that you're talking about, nobody's going to feel shitty about getting stronger.
I always say to women who've never strength trained, start today and I'll speak to you in 3 months and tell me the difference. Yeah. And you know, we've seen studies that show that women will go to the gym and pick up the lightest of all of the weights, right? I don't know why, there's a mindset there. And I'm like, I saw you coming out of Walmart the other day with 20 bags of shopping. You know, I know you can lift heavy things, you know, like, and there's a spectrum of where we all start, right? And I always think being a beginner in strength training is pretty awesome, because you accelerate so quickly.
Yeah, the newbie gains.
And there's people like me that are going like, God, I just want a tiny bicep, please.
Yeah, I mean, do it for 25 years and tell me you're still excited about it. Like, it's not about, you evolve. I think you evolve as a human being, you evolve on your journey, and you realize that there's other things that keep you going. You know, it's got nothing to do with motivation. It's got nothing to do with aesthetics. It's a nice byproduct, and you can certainly focus on those things for certain periods of time of your life. But that can't be the whole and only focus forever.
It can't be. You'd never last. I mean, no. And if so, I mean, you're just so I don't know how you could spend 30, 40 years of your life lifting solely for the aesthetic aspect.
No.
Like, I mean, talk about massive disappointment. Talk about depression every time there's an injury and you can't train.
Right.
I mean, just everything about it. I can't even imagine. It's like the people who are doing it, like us at this point, as Aram is coming around, his spiritual and mental evolution, letting go of some of the physique goals a little bit. Oh, yeah. And he's been transparent on here with it and on social media. And it's exciting for me to even see. It's because you get back into it because how it makes you feel.
Yeah.
I mean, my training, before you got on, Amanda, my training has been nothing for the past few months. Just a lot of shit going on, a lot of busyness, a lot of craziness. My physique maybe has changed a little bit. Nobody notices it because I wear shirts when I go out in public, but I don't even care about that. It's like, it's just,
I wear shirts
know,
when I go to the supermarket.
I know. I'm one of those people. So you can't trust me on social media because I have a shirt on in the grocery store. But yeah, it's more that mental aspect and how you feel and everything like that. The drive and motivation it gives you for other areas of life when you're training.
So, one of the things I like to talk about with strength training for women, and you've probably spoke about this with Liz as well, is that, you have physical symptoms, you have emotional symptoms, but there's the whole psychological side of menopause where women, like I told you, my dead eyes, it's like the not recognizing yourself, feeling invisible. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my family and screaming, does anybody even see me anymore? Because I felt like...
we hear you.
Yeah.
As you yell
fair
at
enough. As you yell at them. But like I feel women lose their self-esteem takes a plummeting. And one of the things that I think strength training can do is make them feel capable again. And when you feel capable, you feel confident. Yeah. All of those feel good endorphins. Feeling capable transpires outside of the gym. It's why we all go all the time, because I went to the gym at 7:30 this morning and I was ready to rock and roll like the day, right? So you set yourself up for success a little bit when you commit to doing something like that, right?
I have a question for you that I think, hopefully maybe simple. With all these new doctors maybe popping up, like we got a guy down the street, it's like, get your Ozempic, get your estrogen, get your testosterone. Like there you go. How can somebody, if they know nobody who's found a good doctor, they cannot get a good referral from somebody, and a woman's dealing with this stuff and she wants to get legitimate answers, where would you recommend the first place? Would it just be her gynecologist, or is there a thing that somebody could Google, a phrase or something where they can find somebody that can truly help them?
Talking about North America, and I really mean the USA here, even though it does include Canada. First of all, there is a menopause society. It's called the Menopause Society, and you can go to menopause.org, put in your zip code, and it lists every single practitioner that's ever done their certification.
Beautiful.
I still would say buyer beware, because just because they have the certification, it doesn't mean that some of them are private clinics that are doing unregulated hormones. But what I would say is go to the Menopause Society's website, print out the prescribing guidelines or their current medical stance. And actually my website has a whole load of resources. If they go to amandathebe.com, you can print them off, because you can go to your doctor and say, I'd like to talk, if you know you're going about menopause, because sometimes you don't, I'd like to talk to you about menopause. These are the prescribing guidelines. These are my symptoms. Can we discuss having hormone therapy? Or if I can't have that, can we discuss some non-hormonal options, right? If the doctor's not willing to do that, or doesn't have the training, doesn't feel comfortable, you can ask for a referral to somebody on this menopause.org list. So that's one way. Awesome. There are a whole bunch of telemedicine options too, but I would also say buyer beware.
Many. Yeah, there's so many now. And some of them are just outrageous.
They are.
With the concierge aspect of it. And it's just
menopause,
a lot of money.
It's filled a gap, right? And so I'm going to give you one. And I think this is, to me, one of the best ones out there, because they only use menopause certified practitioners. They do a full assessment, so they detect, because not everyone can take it, right? And you actually speak to a person, and that's Genev.com, and that's spelled Genenev, Genev.com. I don't know how much it is to go on, but it is covered by insurances if you have insurance. There are a whole ton out there like MIDI Health and Alloy. There's a whole bunch of that out there. Winona, all of those prescribe compounded hormones, unregulated hormones, and do not stick to the menopause guidelines. And that to me is experimenting. You deserve better, and they're usually really expensive. So those are two good resources. And actually, if you're in Canada, you have menopause.org actually has Canadian providers as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel like sometimes we'll ask that and nobody really has an answer, maybe not for this specific topic, but they'll be like, you have to find a good functional doctor. Like, how? I don't know.
How?
Yeah, so you answered. That was great. Yeah. Thank you.
And when it comes to things like functional doctors, I'm just like, really? Like, I'm a bit red flaggy and skeptical and jaded because, you know, if you're leaving your doctors with handfuls of supplements and tons of different testings that are just not like indicated, and you wouldn't know because you don't have that background, you're just getting fleeced, and it just drives me crazy, right? Menopause doesn't need testing. You're supposed to be given medication based on your symptoms throughout, right? It shouldn't be an expensive outlay for women. It is quite simple how the process should work, but you know.
Well, luckily you're a resource and you're a good one and you exist, and there's some other good ones out there, and we'll always point people in the right direction. But I also just wanted to say that I really appreciate the message you have, because it's one that is uncommon, because you're not convincing women that they're broken, and you're not telling them that they're fucked up and they're beyond repair. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, this is going to suck. It sucked for me, but I'm on the other side of it, and I had to fight my way through. You might have to fight your way through, but it's possible. And I'm just so tired of the fucking victim mentality with whatever condition you have. It's not a reason to just lay down and let life take over, because that's not how you want to live. At least that's not how I want to live. And it can certainly be hard. And I don't want to ever invalidate that this is not a very challenging time in a woman's life or in any person's life. Because like you said, it affects just more than the woman herself. It affects everybody around her as well. So I just want anybody that's listening to this to understand that you may be very much in the thick of it and going through it right now, but just understand there are people that care. There are good resources out there, and you don't have to do it alone. And you are going to get through it one way or another.
And that last part's really important, because community is like one of the biggest things. Like when you think you're going through it on your own, and there's currently like in Canada right now, there's 5 million women, and there's 13 million women in the USA. Like there's lots of women going through this. Talk about it with people. Talk to your family about it. Don't be have my husband who thinks, you know, I'm going to leave him. You know, like it's really important to have open conversations.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Last question, Amanda. We ask this question so that we have something to compare and judge you to every one of our other guests. She just got done. No, you're actually then going to love this question. Are you ready?
All right. Okay.
Bye.